Welcome to Tales from the West. Settle yourself by the fire. Let the dust of the trail drift away and ease into a quieter time. Here, under the wide western sky, we share gentle stories of cowboys, outlaws, and settlers, not with gunfire and thunder, but with calm voices and soft echoes of a world long gone. So lean back, close your eyes if you like, and let the frontier carry you off to rest. The Last Ride Out of Abilene, a tale told by the weathered sheriff. August 14th, 1883, Abilene, Kansas. Folks think of sheriffs like me in the same way they think of the desert sun, hard, unyielding, always there. Truth is, most days I felt more like a shadow clinging to the edge of the street. A badge don't make you immortal. It just makes you responsible. And responsibility's a weight heavier than a colt on the hip. My name's near forgotten, so you can call me what the papers did, the weathered sheriff. They called me that 'cause time had already written itself into the lines of my face before I hit 40. I carried those lines like scars, earned not from bullets, but from watching too much of what men can do to each other when law is thin as paper. I kept a journal in those years, not because I fancied myself a writer, but because memory fades, and I reckon someone ought to remember what happened. What I'm going to tell you now is one such entry about the last ride out of Abilene. The town was gasping by then. Abilene had been a cattle boom town once, bustling with cowboys driving herds north. But railroads cut their own paths, and the life drained out of the place like whiskey from a cracked barrel. Saloons still flickered with lamplight, but the laughter was thin. The church bell rang, but it tolled more funerals than weddings. I'd been sheriff near 10 years, and I knew the sound of a town dying. It's quiet, but not peaceful, a kind of restless quiet, like folks waiting for the last train that might never come. That summer, trouble rode in with the dust. 3 brothers, name of Mallory, drifted off the trail and into my streets. Outlaws, though they didn't look it at first. Dressed plain, carried themselves polite enough, but their eyes were like knives hid in cloth. I watched them from the boardwalk as they tied their horses. I knew their kind, men who wore civility like a coat they could shed when the whiskey hit their blood. And I knew right then that Abilene, brittle as it was, might not weather their storm. They took rooms above the livery and made themselves at home. By sundown, they'd already brawled with a ranch hand, cheated at cards, and shot a dog for barking too close. I could have thrown 'em out then and there. But Abilene wasn't a fortress. We didn't have the men nor the will to fight 3 armed wolves at once. So I waited. That night, sitting in my office, I heard the church bell again. Not for a funeral this time, but for warning. The Mallory boys had set fire to the feed store after the owner caught 'em stealing. Flames lit the sky, and the whole town woke to panic. I strapped on my gun and walked out into that orange glow. Some sheriffs would have charged in, shooting and shouting. But I learned long ago, in the West, a man who rushes is already halfway to his grave. I found 'em at the well, laughing as the townsfolk scrambled with buckets. They weren't trying to rob or even to kill. They were making a show, reminding us that they could, power, pure and simple. I stepped up slow, badge glinting in the firelight. "Boys," I said, voice steady as I could make it, "this town's had enough of your sport. You can leave tonight, or you can stay and answer for it, but you ain't staying free." The youngest, Caleb, spat at my boots. "Old man, you think that star makes you steal? You're brittle as this town." The others laughed, but their hands hovered close to their belts. Folks nearby froze, buckets in hand, eyes wide. Nobody dared breathe too loud. I put my hand on my Colt but didn't draw. Instead, I said, I ain't here to test who's faster. I'm here to tell you plain. Ride out now, and I'll not follow. Stay, and I'll see you judged one way or the other. For a moment, silence. Then the oldest Eli nodded, not in respect, in mockery. Tomorrow, he said. We'll ride tomorrow. I knew better than to believe him. Wolves don't wait when they've tasted blood. But I let 'em pass that night, figuring daylight might give me more ground. Next morning, the town was hollow with fear. Shops closed, blinds drawn, children kept indoors. I walked the street, and every window seemed to whisper, Sheriff, do something. By noon, the Mallorys had robbed the mercantile, roughed up the clerk, and left him bleeding. That was the line. A man can stomach insults and even fire, but not blood spilled for spite. I knew I'd face him at the edge of town. No deputy to back me. They'd fled or gone to ground. Just me, my Colt, and the prayers of a town too scared to say 'em aloud. I found 'em saddled, laughing at some crude joke, ready to ride not out of town, but deeper into it. I planted myself in the road. This is where it ends, I told 'em. Eli sneered. You against three? Me against wrong, I said, and wrong don't keep its legs long. The street went still. I could hear my heart beat, hear the creak of leather as their hands drifted toward iron. When guns talk, they talk quick. Caleb drew first, but fear made him sloppy. My Colt barked once, and he dropped, sand puffing under him. The second brother, Jonah, fired wild. Shot tore through my coat, but missed the man inside. I answered, and he fell beside his kin. That left Eli. His eyes weren't knives no more. They were fire, pure hate. He drew slow, steady, like he wanted to carve my death into the dust. We both fired near the same breath. His shot tore my hat clean off. Mine tore him from his saddle. When the echoes died, so did the Mallorys. 3 wolves, stilled in the dust. I stood there, chest heaving, the whole town watching from shadows. Nobody cheered, nobody spoke. Folks just stepped out one by one and went about their business, quiet as mourners. That's the way of the West. Life goes on, even when death lingers in the street. I buried the brothers on the hill, marked their graves with plain stones, not for honor, but for memory. Better we remember the wolves than forget and let more wander in. After that, Abilene held on for a while, but the fire was already gone. The railroad passed it by, and folks drifted where the work was. Within 5 years, my office was boarded. The church bell rusted silent. As for me, I rode on too. Sheriff of nowhere, keeper of stories no one asked to hear. But I keep telling 'em anyway, writing in this old ledger by lantern light. 'Cause the West ain't just gunfights and glory. It's towns that lived, towns that died, and men who stood in between, knowing the land would forget 'em either way. And so I write this down, the last ride out of Abilene. Some nights, when the wind cuts low across the prairie, I swear I hear the echo of that church bell. Not calling for a funeral this time, but ringing for remembrance. And maybe that's all a lawman can ask for, to be remembered even as a shadow.
The Outlaw's Confession. A tale told by the outlaw. August 13th, 1883. One night before Abilene. They'll tell the story their way, the lawmen and the papers. They'll write us as devils, 3 brothers riding into town to burn and steal. They won't write why. They never do. So I'll set it down here in my own words, 'cause tomorrow might be my last, and I'd rather the dust carry my truth than leave it to the sheriff's ledger. My name's Eli Mallory. Folks called me the oldest wolf. Maybe that's fair. But wolves don't hunt 'cause they love the blood. They hunt 'cause the world don't leave 'em no choice. We were Kansas born, but hunger made us orphans long before we buried Ma and Pa. The land turned mean, crops dried to husks, and the bankers circled like buzzards. When you're 12 years old and watch men take your father's farm, you learn quick that law don't bend for the poor. So we bent ourselves instead, horse thieving, card skims, the kind of work no man brags on. Caleb was youngest, barely out of boyhood, but he had a temper like a struck match. Jonah, the middle, never smiled unless he was cheating someone at cards. And me, I carried the weight of keeping us fed, not proud, not righteous, just alive. That trail led us across 100 towns. Some we left standing, some not. I never wanted blood, but when a man raises iron against you, what's left but to answer? By the time we rode into Abilene, the West was changing. The iron rails cut across the prairie, and towns like this one were dying on their feet. We felt it soon as we crossed the edge. Quiet streets, curtains drawn, air thick with hopelessness. It weren't malice that made us stay, it was need. We were running light on coin and lighter still on options. I figured one more score, then westward for good. California, maybe. Someplace with ocean air instead of dust. But Caleb, God rest him, didn't see it that way. He thought the town was weak, ripe for the taking. When he shot that barking dog outside the saloon, I should have stopped him. Truth is, I didn't, and the sound of that shot carried farther than any of us knew. The sheriff came to us that night, bold as brass with firelight on his star. I'll say this plain, I respected the man. He walked alone, steady as stone, facing 3 armed wolves with nothing but his voice. He gave us a choice, ride on or stay and face judgment. Jonah laughed, Caleb spit, but I saw something in the sheriff's eyes. Not fear, not rage, but that quiet steel men get when they've buried too many already. I nodded, told him we'd ride tomorrow. He left, and for a moment I almost meant it. But hunger don't sleep. And pride's worse than hunger. By dawn, Caleb was already restless, swearing he wouldn't let some dusty badge tell him where he could piss or drink. Jonah backed him as he always did. And me? I knew we'd already crossed too many lines to walk free. So we stayed. The mercantile was a mistake. I told Caleb not to hit the clerk, but his temper flared and one swing turned to another. When the man went down bleeding, I felt the ground shift under me. There's crimes towns will stomach, drinking, gambling, even stealing, but blood spilled without cause, that wakes the lion in folks. By noon, the streets were empty, like the town itself was holding its breath. That's when I knew the sheriff would come. He found us saddled, ready not to leave, but to claim what little this place had left. I won't lie. I wanted to face him. Not for honor, but for the way he looked at us the night before. Like we were men worth warning, not just beasts to put down. He planted himself in the road and said, "This is where it ends." I mocked him, asked if one man could stand against 3. But inside, I already knew his kind. He'd die for that star if he had to. And men like that, well, they don't die easy. The draw came fast. Caleb was always quickest, but quick don't matter if your heart stutters. He missed, and the sheriff didn't. My baby brother dropped before I could even curse. Jonah fired wild, panicked, and the sheriff's bullet found him too. Just like that, two graves opened. It was me and him then, and the street went still, like the whole world was leaning in to watch. We drew near the same breath. His shot shaved my hat clean. Mine missed the man and found the dust. Next blink I was down, staring at sky. I ain't dead yet, else I wouldn't be writing this. His bullet cut me deep, but not fatal. They patched me up enough to hang later, I reckon. Maybe tomorrow, maybe the next. Doesn't matter. What matters is this. They'll say the sheriff rid Abilene of wolves. They'll carve his name into ledgers, maybe even into stone. But they won't write ours, save as villains. And yet, we weren't born villains. We were boys once, sons of a farmer who lost too much to laws written for richer men. Hunger made us wolves. Pride kept us that way. So if you're reading this, stranger, don't just see the outlaw. See the boy who once plowed furrows with bare hands, who watched the bank take his home, who swore his brothers wouldn't starve. See the man who knew tomorrow's sunrise would be his last, but wrote anyway, so the dust would remember. August 14th, 1883. If I hang by noon, so be it. Let the sheriff keep his ledger. This here is mine.
The Bartender's Reckoning. A tale told by the saloon bartender. August 15th, 1883, Abilene. The whiskey I pour in this room is thin and bitter, but men drink it all the same. They drink it to forget, they drink it to growl, they drink it 'cause the silence of this dying town is worse than the poison in their bellies. And I watch them, always watching, for that is what a bartender becomes, a witness to other men's unraveling. I saw the Mallory brothers long before their boots struck the boardwalk. You can smell men like that, the sour stench of hunger and pride clinging to their coats like rot. Caleb, the youngest, was fire made flesh, hot and quick to burn. Jonah was sly, always smirking, eyes darting like a thief even when he sat still. And Eli carried a silence more dangerous than his brother's rage. He was not wild, he was not careless, he was inevitable. They walked into my saloon like carrion birds circling a carcass. And I tell you this plain, the room changed, the air thickened, the laughter thinned. Even the piano faltered, notes struck uncertain. That is the power of men who know how to take. The first shot came easy, as they often do. A dog barked in the night, a creature guilty of nothing but living, and Caleb drew iron as if creation itself had insulted him. One crack in the dark, one yelp cut short, and the town understood the wolves had arrived. The sheriff came not long after, star on his chest glinting in the lamplight. He was an old man, worn but unbroken, his voice carrying the weight of graves already filled. He offered them a choice, ride on or rot in judgment. A simple bargain. But men like the Mallorys cannot ride on. Hunger roots them, pride chains them. I watched Eli as the sheriff spoke, and I swear I saw the faintest flicker in him, a shadow of a man who might have wanted to be spared, but his brother's laughter strangled it dead. They stayed. The next day the line was crossed, the mercantile, the clerk beaten to blood. The town drew in on itself, shutters barred, voices hushed. You could feel it in the earth, the breath before the storm, the dread before the execution. At dusk, the sheriff stood alone. No deputies, no crowd at his back. Just one man against three, the badge, a curse, and a crown. I closed the saloon early, leaned in the doorway, and watched the stage set for slaughter. The draw was sudden, merciless. Caleb dropped first, his fire extinguished in dust. Jonah followed, his sly grin split by iron. And then Eli, the quiet one, the inevitable one. He stood against the sheriff as though time itself had paused to weigh them. They fired near the same heartbeat. When the smoke cleared, Eli lay broken in the street, his eyes glassy with disbelief. 3 wolves undone in less than a breath. The sheriff did not smile. He did not boast. He did not raise his voice in triumph. He walked to my bar after, sat down heavy, and ordered whiskey. The glass trembled in his hand, though his voice stayed steady. "You all right, Sheriff?" I asked. "No such thing," he muttered, and left the drink untouched. His star glinted once in the lamplight, then disappeared into the night. Later, I found Eli's satchel left behind. No treasure, no loot, only letters, worn thin, written in a woman's hand. A mother's words, perhaps, or scraps of a home long stolen, and a child's scrawl, crooked lines, ink blotched by tears, no outlaw's trophies, just ghosts of hunger, ghosts of ruin. And I understood then the terrible symmetry. The sheriff had not killed 3 beasts. He had buried 3 boys who had been driven to the edge of the earth and found nothing but teeth to fight with. Abilene will not remember them. The town is already dying, its bones picked by the railroad, its breath stolen by silence. In a year, in 5, no one will recall the Mallory name. They'll forget the sheriff too, but I will not, for I know what I saw. I saw law and lawlessness meet in the dust, and I saw how little difference there truly was between them. One man killed for pride, the other for duty, but the street did not care. The dust swallowed all the same. So write this down, stranger, if you care to listen. The West is not built of heroes and villains. It is built of hunger, pride, silence, and the choices men make when the world has already doomed them. The Mallorys chose wrong. The sheriff chose blood. And me, I choose to remember. The saloon is quiet now, but the echoes remain. The crack of Caleb's pistol, the sheriff's cold mutter, the weight of those letters pressed into my palm. I pour another drink, though no one asks for it, and I raise it not to law or to outlaw, but to the truth, bitter, heavy, and stained permanent in the wood of this bar. And I'll tell you plain, the real ghost of Abilene is not the Mallory brothers, nor the sheriff's ledger. The ghost is the silence afterward. The hush that falls when men realize there was never glory, never justice, only dust. And when the wind cuts low across the prairie, rattling the shutters and stirring the ashes, I swear I still hear the sheriff's words, soft as a curse, no such thing.